Oh, yes.
Oh,
Hey,
this
what's up,
broadcast is
friends?
live.
Graham Baldwin here, joined by my buddy Kyle Scheele. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you're having a great day. I got my water bottle. That's the extent of it.
I
But
got water too.
you are
I've got all
well.
sorts of
I
options.
got another one. I got this coconut drink, whatever this is. My goodness, I'm out. You beat me. You beat me. Hey guys, glad you guys are here. So we've been doing this series on a daily basis where we were just talking to people in the speaking industry, talking about how we are processing everything that's going on in the world right now. Obviously, this is unique, unprecedented times, and so Kyle is here representing kind of the youth industry, the youth speaking market. Kyle and I have known each other for many years. He's a phenomenal speaker, great guy, one of the more creative people that I know in the world, and so I want to talk with him. So Kyle, first of all, talk us through here the past couple of weeks. What's life been like for you?
Oh man, it's been probably the same it's been for a lot of people, just sort of crazy up and down. I was supposed to be, what's today, Tuesday? I was supposed to be flying back from an event today, and I was supposed to have been gone for, I think, like 6 days in a row, on and off. I think I was going to come home for like 12 hours during that time. And none of that stuff ended up happening at all. And it was probably, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago that I had an event cancel, and they were like, hey, we're just kind of being, overly cautious, and we're going to reschedule this.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, that kind of sucks, but it is what it is. And then, and I told them, hey, I want to do what's best for you guys. I want to make sure that, you guys are happy and comfortable. And then a couple of days later, I had a call with a really big event, this conference in Georgia with over 1,000 students were going to be there. And this was right when coronavirus is starting to really hit the news in the US. And I kind of expected that call to be her saying, hey, we're probably gonna have to cancel. And she said, oh, we're not worried about it at all. We're going forward. I guess the governor of Georgia had said something like, the only symptom I have is a lack of sleep. And so she was kind of going off of that. And she said she had been fielding calls all that morning of people saying like, hey, what's going on? And she was like, hey, we're going to do this conference either way. You owe us the money either way. So she seemed very confident. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. Well, I guess we're doing this. And then a couple days go by, and I had another event cancel, and then another event cancel. And then, and that's when I was starting to go like, wow, this is starting to add up to some significant losses for me. Yeah. And then that lady called me back. It was like a Saturday morning. I was still in bed. She's an hour ahead of me. And so she sounded like she was in tears, like, or about on the verge of tears. And she's like, we have to cancel. I'm so sorry, and everything's falling apart. We were the last conference to cancel. We were trying to hold out. And that at that point, that had basically cleared my schedule through May at this point. And so, yeah, it's been pretty wild. And then I'm a part of an agency with a bunch of other youth speakers, and I have a lot of friends. I've been doing this for about a decade now, so I have a lot of friends who are in the youth world, in the corporate world, and so there's just been a lot of talk, and it seems like it's hitting everybody the same way. So it's been quite a wild ride, to say the least.
Yeah, that's one of the unique things right now is it's not just here in the States, but literally around the world. So as of this morning, I did a podcast interview with a guy who is in Cape Town, South Africa. And so immediately it was just like, how's things working out over there? You guys doing okay? Just knowing nothing about Cape Town, but knowing that it's affecting there,
Yeah.
And I've been halfway around the world here in Nashville and knowing, it's affecting here. So I had kind of a similar situation, what you were describing. A client we were working with, I had emailed them on this would have been like 10 days ago ish, give or take, on a Friday. And he's like, yeah, as of now, all systems go. This was for an event late April. And then then I talked to him early next week, the following week. This would have been last week. And he's like, yeah, there's no way we can pull this off. But he was kind of replaying it for me. He said, I was literally driving home that Friday thinking like, yeah, I think we're going to be okay. He's like, I came into work Monday morning. It's like, there's no way we can do this. And just like how quickly things are changing. So with everything that you have had that has fallen through, are you finding that a lot of them are being rescheduled or postponed, or just a lot of them just straight up canceled right now?
For us in the youth world, I'm lucky that I'm part of an agency called Top Youth Speakers, and we're run by a guy named Josh Shipp, who's an industry veteran. Josh, he's just a great guy, and he's a very analytical, number tracking kind of a guy, and so he's been keeping us all updated. And for us, over 90% of the events right now are choosing to reschedule. I think a lot of them are saying basically, don't give us our money back, and we will choose a date soon. Like no, most of them, at least in my, the ones for me, have not rescheduled to a specific date.
Yeah.
They've just said, we still want to do this. We just don't know when yet. But I know that from what I'm hearing in the corporate world, the vast majority of events are just canceling outright. And so that's a difference between those two markets. Is it seems like most of the people in the youth world are saying, hey, let's just push this down the road a little bit. Whereas corporate is not going that way from my understanding.
Yeah, I've heard both. I've heard, several events that are like you're describing, kind of rescheduling and postponing, but not even quite sure when they're rescheduling or postponing to, just knowing that we still want to do this. It's going to look different. We're not sure. Because even if there's one of these events I had in April, they pushed to June because this convention center they're at, they're like, this is the only date we could get. But he was like, I don't even know if we can pull it off in June, knowing like, who knows what's going to happen between now and then. So, so is there any sense from you as far as how long it's going to take before, like a question that had come in, like how long before we get back to normal? Like, is there anything that you would be booked for that you're like, yeah, I could see that probably still happening, or you still just feel day to day?
As a motivational speaker, I want to be like positive and optimistic. I'm also a very realistic person. Yeah. I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm not a doctor. I don't work for the CDC. And so I think anything that I would say at this point would just be purely speculation. Yeah. And so my hope is that we figure stuff out. And I think there's lots of stuff that you can look at in history where some crazy thing happened. Everyone thought it was going to be the end of the world. And then something else happened. Somebody figured something out and they're like, oh, if you eat 2 grapes, it cures the virus, and it's like, then we just get grapes to everybody. And it's like stuff like that's never happened. But stuff like that has happened plenty of times in history. We thought this is going to be the end of the world. And then something like one thing turns it around. But there have also been plenty of things in history that were like, we just have to let this play out and see what happens. And so I'm hopeful that things will turn around. I would say my optimistic / realistic hope is that by the fall things start getting back to normal. That seems like a long enough timeline based on some of what we're seeing from other countries who were impacted earlier than we were. So I'm hopeful that the fall comes back and all of that business comes back. But I also don't know. There's that report from the Imperial College in London that was saying like it could be 18 months. So I don't want to. It's kind of a hope for the best, plan for the worst sort of a situation. And that's the best that I can do is just kind of go with that.
So what are you doing right now as far as, it could be a couple weeks, could be a couple months, could be 18 months. Nobody really knows. Like you said, nobody has the crystal ball to look into. But my guess is that a significant portion of your personal income is from speaking. And now all of a sudden, like so many speakers, it's just gone. So you kind of reach a point of like, all right, I'm going to just kind of sit and wait to see how this plays out versus like, you have 19 kids that all need to be fed. And so thinking through what needs to happen between point A and point B to just make sure like, I still have income coming in and things are, the kids are still being fed.
Kid than you have.
It feels like you have a bunch.
I do. Well, they're a handful. I have 4. 4 is kind of a tipping point where you're like, this is a lot. So what I'm doing. So, man, that's a great question. For the first thing I would say is like we have tried to be smart with our finances, and we've got some savings, and we're not in immediate danger of anything. We also I have a few things that provide income regardless of this. Some online stuff. I have a book contract that still has another payment that has to come out. Like we're not in any danger of like in the next few weeks running out of money. Really, even in the next few months running out of money. But it is scary to go like to just immediately turn that spigot off. So you and I were kind of talking about this before, and I've talked about this with several people over the last few days, is that I actually have, there's a whiteboard right back there where the other day I was once, this was maybe a week ago when everything was kind of starting like at once. I was talking to a friend, another speaker, and I said, how many of you, have you had events cancel? And he said, yeah, I've had this. And I said, I've got 2. And then as we were talking, a third one canceled. And I was like, it felt like everything's falling down. And so I started going like feeling a little panicky. And so I got up and I just wrote down on this whiteboard, I was like, here's a list of all the things that I can control, and here's a list of all the things that I can't control. And I just, for things I can't control coronavirus, I can't control the stock market, I can't control event cancellations, I can't control general societal panic. And so then I just kind of circled all that stuff, and I just wrote, since I can't control these things, I'm not allowing myself to worry about them, because every minute that I worry about that is just a wasted minute. It just doesn't do anything. And that's a general rule that I've tried to follow. It doesn't always work. Sometimes you slip back into that. But I've seen other people who you can tell they've wasted their entire last week because they're just kind of in this spinning cycle of despair. But the things I can control are my attitude, my response, my spending, my marketing, my creative output, and my own behavior. So in terms of hand washing and social distancing and encouraging other people to do those things. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to focus on right now. From a business standpoint, I'm trying to look at, okay, well, what are the things that I can do to make money with outside of events? And so I have been trying to put together a book proposal before all of this, and felt like I didn't have the time and was always doing all these other things. And so I'm like, okay, well, maybe this is the way, the universe's way of focusing or forcing me to focus on this thing. And that's one thing I can control. So in fact, right before this call, I was working on a book proposal, and I've been looking at what are other ways that, how could I ramp up my online income? What are other options that I have? Because I think that I'm seeing a lot of speakers who are kind of just trying to go like, oh, it's going to be fine. Just like stay in there, just hustle. But the truth is, like, most people aren't answering their emails right now. Most people, if you email them and go, hey, have you started looking at speakers? They're going to email you back and go, have you started looking at the news in the last 3 weeks? Like, don't send emails like that right now. And so there's only so much that you actually can do to push your speaking business forward when, like, literally the entire world is on pause right now. Yeah. And so that's what I'm trying to focus on. And then just trying to focus on my own attitude and my own outlook through all of this, because it would be easy to despair, and I just know that that's not going to help anybody. So I'm seeing this as an opportunity to take a little bit of a step back, to spend a lot of time with my family and friends, not friends in person, but reaching out to people. I've probably had more Skype calls in the last 2 weeks than I've had in my entire life. Right. And just looking for ways to move the ball forward. I know that probably the reason people want to watch a Facebook Live like this is so that they can find some, like, here's an answer. This guy figured it out and he's still making the same money. Like, nobody is making the same money right now as they were making 3 weeks ago. And anybody that tells you that they are is lying. And so I think that the only thing that you can do is go, okay, well, how do I make the best of this situation? How do I make the most of this? Knowing that it's not going to be as good as it was a couple weeks ago, a couple months ago, but also knowing that there's opportunities in good markets and bad markets and ups and downs. There's always opportunity there, and you just might have to look harder for it now. Yeah.
You've you kind of touched on this earlier, but knowing that you've been in the industry for a long time, spring's very busy, and now all of a sudden spring's gone. Fall tends to be fairly steady. Some fall conferences, a lot of back to school assemblies, that sort of thing. You mentioned that you've tried reaching out, or maybe you're considering reaching out, but you also don't want to appear tone deaf. But one of the things that I have noticed is that there's a lot of events that obviously were supposed to happen that now are not happening, that are being pushed to later. So it's almost like it's creating this big influx of events happening in the fall and later half of the year, knowing that now all of a sudden there's going to be a lot of needs for speakers. There's a buddy of mine that I was talking to the other day who plans a big conference in September. And he said, as of now, it's all systems go. Like, that could change at any moment, but like, as of now, I'm still having a conference, and there's still a lot of people coming to town, and I still need speakers. So how do you find the balance of, like, nobody's speaking at anything today, but people are still thinking about and booking speakers for later in the year? So are you reaching out? Are you having any of those conversations, like the balance of like doing that, but also not appearing tone deaf?
Yeah, I think because I work with this agency, they do a lot of the outreach and marketing stuff for me. So they're very good at the relationship side of that. They have clients they've worked with for years and years and years. And so I think I'm sort of letting them lead on that. I know those discussions are still happening. In fact, again, with our agency keeps track of details and numbers and all that stuff. Like they actually saw more inquiries this year than they did last year during this time, but they don't expect that to hold up. Like they expect there will be a dip in the coming days and weeks as people are off. So I think the way that we're handling that is to like if people are looking for speakers, they're going to find us. We do a good job with SEO and we're out there and sharing, social media posts and our brands are out there. But not trying to be tone deaf, like you said, in reaching out to people and going like, hey, like, are you hiring? And so I think that if you have existing relationships with people who are booking speakers, or if you can do that in a way that is sensitive, I think there's probably a way to ask people, hey, I know this is all crazy. I know that this is nothing's really guaranteed for August, September, October, whatever. But hey, where are you at? What are you guys thinking on that? I think getting a conversation going is fine. I think you just need to get it going with the expectation and understanding of like, hey, you know what? This may be the last thing on this person's mind. But you're also right that you can't pause everything, and there are people who are still going to be booking things that far out. And so if that's as long as you can do that in a way that's not tone deaf, I think that's probably a good way to spend some time.
Yeah, for sure. We have nothing but time at the moment. So one of the things that was a question that had just come in here from David: how are you going to tweak and adapt your content after this crisis? How will you change to better serve people? I'd be curious if you have any thoughts on this, because I think what could happen is this is one of those things that when the dust settles, when we're all back to like business as usual, life as normal as it's going to be, that this could be the type of thing that it's on everyone's mind. And so everyone, speakers are like, let's talk about coronavirus, or I'm using it as any possible illustration because it's top of mind with everyone. But like, it's possible for that to be like way overdone, and everyone becomes a speaker who's talking about coronavirus, So is there anything that you are thinking about as to like, hey, when the next event would be, of how you're going to be addressing it? Or does that still just feel like that's so far out? I don't know at this point.
I think I'm of two minds on that. And I think that on the one hand, I agree with what you said. And you and I have talked about this at length over the years in different times, that one of the hard things about working in the youth market is that there's so much time sensitive virality in terms of content. And so there are jokes that you could do. I mean, when the whole Harambe thing was happening, literally even just saying the word Harambe on stage would get this massive response in the crowd. If you did that today, people would just it would be crickets and they'd be staring at you. Like there's this real sense in when you're talking to young people, like if you can be in the moment, they're like, wow, this old man knows what this viral thing is. But when as soon as it's over, you'll know the second you say it too late. And all of a sudden you're like, that joke that killed for a month is dead now. And so I think that is a thing that could happen here. I think that you'll probably be able to get, especially right after any kind of quarantine stuff lifts, and when the economy first starts kicking again, I think that you'll be able to get some real life out of any kind of thing that references, hey, because it's the elephant in the room, which you and I have also talked about. Like if my microphone dies on stage, and or if some kid farts really loud in the audience or something, like if I don't address the elephant in the room, sometimes that's worse. And so having all come out of this crisis, I think that there will be a period of time when you go, can we talk about how crazy that was? But I also know that there will come a time when nobody wants to talk about that anymore, or where it does feel like that's played out. And I think that these are the kind of things that this is why speakers get paid a lot of money, is because we should be able to know and feel when those things are getting played out, and be sensitive to that kind of, hey, when is it time to move on? I do think that there are a lot of lessons to be learned through all of this. And some of it is stuff that you will learn from coronavirus, and you will know very specifically, I learned this thing because of this big crisis that went on. But it doesn't mean that when you share that lesson on stage later, you have to always contextualize it through coronavirus. Because, the fact is, you think about something like 9/11. 9/11 was this massive, huge event in our cultural history. But if you're talking about 9/11 right now, people are probably going to go dude, that happened a long time ago. Unless you were at ground zero, or that's your story. And even then, people are going to go okay, that we kind of understand that we have a cultural narrative for what that story is. So but you could talk about all the stuff that you learned through that difficult time if you can bring it to a broader context, which I think is the task of any speaker is to turn your specific experiences and story into something that can help anybody.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like prior to all of this, it felt like 9/11 was one of the biggest things that had happened in our lifetime. But one of the things that feels slightly different is like 9/11 was like, yeah, it certainly affected the entire country. We'll all remember where we were, but like I didn't, you and I lived in Missouri at the time, so
Yeah.
like
And I was
certainly
at school that day and I came to school the next day. And
yeah,
my
so
parents
like
still went to work and yeah.
so it's just like it's on everyone's mind, absolutely. But like we didn't live in New York, you didn't live in DC, you didn't live in some place where like, wow, my day-to-day life was dramatically affected by this for an extended period of time,
Yeah.
to the point now where like every school across the country is shut down and every possible event is shut down and churches are closed and like everywhere, so it's just a really unique thing. So any final words of wisdom for speakers that are watching this or watching on the replay who are going like, man, this is crappy and I'm not sure how this is going to play out, and on it goes. Any final thoughts you'd have?
Yeah, I would just say, I mean, this is just general advice for life, but like as a race of humanity, we have been through a lot of really hard stuff over the entire existence of our species, and we will continue to go through really hard stuff as time goes on. This is a really, really difficult thing. This is the thing that nobody that I know has faced anything like this. I mean, you and I are in groups on Facebook and stuff where people talk about, who have been in the industry for 30 years or 40 years are talking about, I've never experienced anything like this. I don't know a person who's ever experienced anything like this. So this is a unique outlier event. But in the broader scheme of life, this is a very difficult thing that we'll go through, and eventually this too will pass. And that can sound really like saccharine or like uncaring or whatever, to just kind of, I'm not trying to write it off. Like, again, I lost all my income for the foreseeable future. This is very much impacting me. I have people in my life who are directly impacted by the virus right now. And so I'm not trying to brush any of that off, but I am saying like there will come a day when this is behind us. And so right now, be asking yourself, like, what am I going to wish I had done during this time? And I guarantee it's not, I'm glad that I stayed glued to the news, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on, what sort of news that you're listening to. Like every news outlet has an obligation to keep you glued to their screens. And so they're going to tell you the worst things that they can possibly tell you. So I would just say, like, be focusing on what you can do during this time, what you can get out of this, and know, hey, you know what? We might have to tighten our belts a little bit here. Like, we might have to change our behavior substantially, but there will come a day again when we'll be back to some version of normal. And then the other thing I would say is just like, don't miss out on the fact that there's still so much beauty and light and goodness in the world today. And I was out the other day taking a walk, and I noticed like, oh, the trees are starting to break bud for spring, and like the grass is growing again, and it was 70 degrees the other day. And so that doesn't take away any of the crappy stuff that's happening in this world, but like, you and I are not obligated to be sad because there are sad things going on. Like, it's okay to still find joy and love and comfort and stuff in the world, and just kind of hold on, because we're all going to need that stuff to get us through whatever's ahead, whether this disappears in 2 weeks or 2 years, who knows? But we need to hold on to those things because there's still a lot of good in the world. So I keep
telling my wife, either it'll pass or I will pass. So I don't know.
Yeah, you would text me an hour ago to say, hey, are we still on? I said, as long as I'm not dead from the virus, then I'll be on the call. So yeah, I mean, who knows? We don't get to control what happens to us in life. We just get to control our reaction and our response. And that's a thing that speakers have been saying for a long, long time. Like, that's pretty much almost any motivational speech boils down to that. Yeah. But now is the time when we're going to see like, how many people can actually live that, who have been talking about it for a long time? Like, is this embedded in your general philosophy of life, or is this a thing that you realized would, go well on stage? And I feel like, I've always been that guy that I've had a pretty balanced view of, hey, you know what, let's just take things as they come, and the world there's going to be good, there's going to be bad. We'll take all of it and just look for the best way through.
Good stuff, Kyle. If people want to find out more about you, check out what you're up to, where can we go?
KyleScheele.com.
Beautiful.
Or at Kyle Scheele on any of the things.
Any of the places.
SCHEELE. So that's me.
Hopefully all those things are still standing.
So far, yeah.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, Grant.